Well, thank you, Representative Tarra Simmons, for joining us this morning. We're very happy to have you here, and we're very happy to have you representing our community. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say today about your vision for our state. And you've done a wonderful job so far, passed a lot of amazing bills. So we're looking forward to hearing what your plans for the future are. And thank you all for coming today to listen to Tarra.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Martha. It's wonderful to see some of you again. I think I know almost most of you on here, but wonderful to meet new friends as well. Is it Martha or Marty?
Either Marty. Yeah.
Marty. As Marty said, I am the newly elected representative for the 23rd Legislative District, which is right now, it's East Bremerton, Silverdale, Paulsbo, Hansville, and both of the Port Gamble Swellam Tribe and the Suquamish Tribe and Bainbridge Island. But we are going through redistricting right now, and I might actually be drawn out of the district, which would be really sad. If that happens, I probably will not be running again because it would just be too much. But I am still sitting right now and hoping that, we get to stay together as the redistricting happens. I just got elected in November of 2020 and had my first session, and it was on Zoom, which was really difficult. But just getting elected was, something I never imagined based on my life story and where I came from. So I'll tell you a little bit about that first. I was born to parents who suffered with substance use disorder. Everybody in my family has suffered with addiction and has been incarcerated. Both of my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, everybody has kind of suffered with the same things. And it is really tied to, I think, for generations. My grandmother was a Mexican immigrant. My grandfather was Spanish heritage, and we grew up in poverty and really had really difficult times because of being in poverty. When I was little, I grew up in a neighborhood where it was gang infested in California, and my father was a crack addict, and people were shot on my front porch, and I came from severe violence and poverty. And when I was trafficked as a young girl at 12 and 13 years old, and I ended up being pregnant at 14. So I was a single mom of and my children are Black also, and that's been difficult in a lot of ways. But I had my first son, Davon, when I was 15 years old, and I was living here in Bremerton. And that kind of gave me a little bit of hope and to try to change my life and to do better than what my parents did. But it was a struggle. And I was the first person to graduate high school, though, in all of my family. And then a neighbor had told me about community college, and I went and started at community college, and I found some success there. And so I was the first person to go to college in my family, and I transferred to Pacific Lutheran University and became a registered nurse by the time I was 21. And I thought that I had kind of changed the patterns in my family, but I hadn't really addressed all of the childhood trauma. I don't know if you all know about adverse childhood experiences, but I have a score of 10, which is the highest. And what I find true of everybody who ends up in prison is they almost always have high ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences. So I really think about it as the trauma to prison pipeline and what I'm really trying to address here in our state. So, I hadn't addressed all the trauma. And so I would get into unhealthy relationships a lot, honestly, with men who were abusive. I didn't really know anything about boundaries. I didn't know how to take care of myself and, keep myself safe in a lot of ways. And I have this huge heart and compassion, and I still struggle with it today, honestly, caring so much for others, but forgetting to care for myself, and something that I'm still working on in therapy right now. So through relationships and a lot of stress, I also became addicted to drugs as a way to cope and numb the pain from my childhood. And eventually that ended up not very good for me because I was stealing from Walmart, and I was selling a small amount of drugs to support my own habit. And that ended up me going to prison in 2011. And at that time, I had two sons because I had Dominic along the way, and they're 18 and 28. Just so you know, Dominic is 18, just turned 18, and Davon is 28 years old. And I went to prison. They were 8 and 18, and it was a really, really difficult time for them as well. And being separated from your kids and having a significant criminal history. My nursing career was over. I was able to work as a nurse for 11 years, and I worked in long-term care and emergency room nursing, and loved that career, but that career was over as soon as I got the felony convictions. I also, separated from them and wasn't there for them for 2 years while I was in prison. And that still, impacts them and gives them trauma that they have to overcome to not follow in my footsteps. So it was really a difficult time. And it was also a time of good healing for me, though. It was the first time I ever met people that were in 12-step recovery programs. So nobody in my family had ever gotten into recovery. Everyone has died or is still suffering with addiction, except for one of my brothers down in California who is clean now for about 8 years, I think. I will celebrate hopefully 10 years of recovery on Thursday, which I'm really excited about. It's been a long journey. So, it was the first time I got exposed to recovery programs was in prison, which was great for me. I met my sponsor. She was a volunteer. She came to the prison and shared about how, people with backgrounds like mine can still have healthy lives. And it's just really amazing to know that I now am not alone, and I don't have to hide in the stigma of my background and my trauma experiences and my post-traumatic stress issues and my addiction issues. And I have people who have also lived through that and are good people, and we're making it through every day. And so, that was the best thing about prison, was meeting volunteers who helped me when I got out. But I got out and I was working at Burger King. That was the only place that would give me a job. It was $9.19 an hour I was making. And then the county was garnishing half of my paycheck to pay the court fines and fees that everybody is given when they're convicted of a felony conviction. They'd given me $6,000 in costs, nothing to go like restitution for a victim. This was all money to fund the public defender and the county clerks. And it accumulated 12% interest the whole time I was in prison. And so when I got out, I had this bill and I couldn't pay it. And they garnished my Burger King paycheck to pay this court costs. And so I was not able to get housing for my sons and I. And we wanted to be together again, obviously. And also, it's really hard to find people to rent to you because of your criminal history as well. Landlords ask that question on an application, and often for both employment and housing, they do not offer opportunities to people who have criminal history. And as I got to know more people in my recovery community, I realized there are people who have 15, 20 years of giving back and saving lives and helping people change their lives. And they also can't, do things like adopt their grandchildren that are in foster care, or become the executor of an estate for their dying mother. Even with 20 years of recovery time, it's a lifetime sentence when you're given a criminal record. And so I was really motivated because I didn't have very many options before me. Also, it was, I could go back to selling drugs to make enough money to find a place to live for my kids, but I knew I would go back to prison then. And it was either that or go back to school and get a new career in a field where maybe somebody would give me an opportunity. And so I decided I was going to go to law school because I needed a new career. I had known other formerly incarcerated people who had become lawyers, and I wanted to change these laws, not just for myself, but for my whole community. So I started law school in August of 2014. I, during studying to become a lawyer, to get into law school, I was actually homeless and having to find housing because, I couldn't find a place to live. My sponsor was letting me stay on her couch. It was a real mess. But thankfully, and it's definitely because of the God of my understanding, that I made it this far and made it to law school in August of 2014. I had only been out of prison for about 14 months. And I took that as a real opportunity and really dedicated myself. I ended up graduating magna cum laude near the top of my class with all kinds of awards, the Dean's Medal, the Graduating Student Award. During my time in law school, I started my nonprofit, which I'm the director of today, the Civil Survival Project, which is an organization led by and for formerly incarcerated people doing advocacy and legal services for people coming out of prison. So I started that in law school. The governor had appointed me to 2 different boards and commissions. I had interned at 5 different organizations, and I had done all of this wonderful work and built this incredible network. I was being asked to speak all across the nation on issues of criminal justice, judicial conferences, schools and graduation ceremonies, and just so many different convenings, policymakers, going to Washington, D.C., testifying regularly in Olympia on legislation. And I graduated from law school, and I went to take the bar exam and become an attorney. And the Washington State Bar Association said I did not have the character and fitness to become an attorney because of my past. And I was devastated because I knew 2 other men who had much more significant criminal history than I did, and they had become lawyers in Washington State. One of them was my dear friend. His name is Sean Hopwood. He had done 12 years in federal prison for 5 armed bank robberies. And the year before I sat, he became a lawyer and had been clerking for the Washington, D.C. circuit and became a Georgetown law professor. And it was just amazing how they were not letting me in, but they let him into the lawyer club. So it was devastating. It happened for people that are spiritual. I do identify as a Christian, but I'm very not religious. And that's why I love your church and probably will go to your church if I ever, because I don't go to church regularly because of a lot of reasons. But anyway, I got the news on Good Friday. And for those of people that know the Christian faith, Good Friday was the day that Jesus died, and then the resurrection came, and he rose again. Anyway, they told me I couldn't sit for the bar exam on Good Friday, and I was devastated. I felt like I was, I had come so far. The big thing also during law school, I got this fellowship that it paid my salary for 2 years to do the type of law I wanted to do, and I wanted to have a clinic in Kitsap County to help people coming out of jail and prison with their legal problems, their court fines and fees, and getting those taken care of, and fighting to the court to get them off their record, to get their criminal records taken off their record. That's what I wanted to do when I graduated, and I got this fellowship. I was the first person at my school to ever get it, the first person in Washington State to ever get it. This fellowship has been around for 30 years, and they fund 30 people every year that are graduating. And usually it goes to people that graduate from Harvard or Yale, really prestigious schools. And they gave me one of these, and it would have been so good for our community to have my salary paid and me be able to dedicate my time. And because I couldn't become licensed as a lawyer because of my past drug addiction and criminal involvement, it put a hamper in those plans. But I'll get to a good story at the ending, because on Wednesday we're doing a big thing in Kitsap County with my day job. So anyway, it was all part of the plan, right? So I had to fight to become a lawyer, and we didn't really know how to overcome this problem because it had never been done before. Usually when the Bar Association says somebody can't sit for the bar exam, that's the end of the story. Well, fortunately, because of all of the work I had done during law school, I had a lot of people in the legal community in Washington who were not going to take no for an answer. And they threw a Hail Mary pass to the states, directly to the state Supreme Court. And like thousands of people came alongside me to help. And it took 7 months, but we got a hearing date in the state Supreme Court. Never has been done in history. And that was on November 16th of 2017. And usually when you go, and the good part of the story is that my friend Sean Hopwood, who I told you about, who became a law professor at Georgetown Law School, well, he's licensed in Washington State. So he flew from Washington, D.C. to come here and argue my case in the state Supreme Court. Now, how ironic is that? You've got the armed bank robber who's been admitted to the Washington State Bar and became a lawyer and was arguing on my behalf in front of 9 Supreme Court justices and saying, you need to fix this problem, without saying that specifically, but just the optics of it was great. So usually it was a brilliant argument. And usually it takes about 4 or 5 months for the Supreme Court to issue an opinion either way on the cases that come before them. And our case was at 9:00 a.m. By 3:30 that day, unanimous decision from the Supreme Court that I should take the next bar exam. So it was the most healing form of justice I ever received from any system, for sure. And I know that it has encouraged a lot of other people to now see themselves, no matter your past, being able to become a lawyer and join the profession and serve people in these ways. It's not been perfect. Right now, we are representing another individual who's being denied in the Supreme Court and trying to replicate this right now. So stay tuned on that. But it did take 4 or 5 months for the opinion to finally follow. And they gave me the order that day so I could take the next bar exam in February. And I didn't have to wait, for another bar exam to come up in July. And then they issued the opinion in April, and they definitely cited to the power of redemption, that, people can change and nobody's past dictates their future. And they also cited to the gender discrimination in my case, and that there was no difference between Sean and I except for our gender. And it was just a really beautiful 33-page opinion that is now helping in a lot of different advocacy and what we're trying to accomplish around civil rights for people who've been incarcerated. And so that on that day also, the courtroom was packed, and they had to have standing room only out in the lobby, and somebody fainted because it was so hot in there and so many people, and it was just so cool. But Sherry Appleton was in the courthouse on that day. So was the current Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins, and my now seatmate, Drew Hansen. And, it was Sherry Appleton who encouraged me to run for office because she was retiring. And of course, I never saw myself running for office. I never saw myself being a lawyer when I was sitting in prison, for sure. And I never, ever imagined running for office. But, Sherry really took me on her wing and said, Tarra, I need to retire, but I need to make sure I have a good successor who will carry on my legacy of being a champion for the most vulnerable. And that's exactly what, my heart is all about because of my lived experiences. People, who come from poverty, people who suffer with behavioral health issues, people of color, people who've been incarcerated, immigrants, my heart is to uplift and make sure that we are caring for our neighbors in the way my faith says that we should, and giving opportunities. It's not just about caring, that is part of it, and being nice to people and treating them, but also changing these dang laws and policies and making wise budget decisions that are showing that we care. And so, Sherry asked me to run and be her successor. And it was really, another thing, I was really afraid. But again, it was a large community of people. I know Bonner was out there waving signs for me. Thank you, Bonner. And Jeff Campbell too, who's on here. It took a whole community to come together and help me, because I can't do any of this by myself. I'm not just, I guess, full of self-confidence and privilege, and some of our electeds, they come from a different lived experience. I need community. I need people to help me, because I don't always feel like I belong here. And everybody did come together, and we won, and we made history in November of 2020. And as far as I know, I'm the only formerly incarcerated person in our nation that is a state legislator, and I'm connected to a national movement of formerly incarcerated people. And we have yet to identify anybody who's open. Now, if you look at history, though, there was always, somebody that had to go first, and a woman, person of color, an openly LGBTQ person. There were people who were LGBTQ who were hiding, didn't share because of stigma while they were serving in office. So there could be another formerly incarcerated person out there, but I haven't met them yet. So, we came together, we made history, and then I hit the ground running because I had been doing so much advocacy in Olympia prior to joining. I was the author of the New Hope Act, which allows people to now vacate their criminal record after a period of time. And Drew Hansen was the prime sponsor. So I worked with him very closely for several years before I became his seatmate. And so I feel like I definitely have a leg up on my other freshman colleagues because of all of the work I had done in Olympia. I knew the process. I knew a lot of the people. And I've been able to use those experiences to benefit our district more quickly. So it was more difficult, I will say, because we were on Zoom, and it's harder to communicate when you're in a virtual world. You have to either know somebody's phone number, or you have to send an email and kind of make an appointment. And we don't have time like that during busy session. So it's been a little bit more difficult because of session, but it didn't slow me down too much. I definitely passed more bills than any of my freshman colleagues. My freshmen and my seatmates, both Senator Rolfes and Representative Hansen, laugh at me because they're like, Tara, most of the time freshmen come in here and their first bill is something very technical and easy, like let's rename a road, or let's, and they're like, oh, you just want to restore the right to vote to all formerly incarcerated people. Like, Tara, and I'm like, or, all of the bills I introduced were like profound, big issues. But we did, my freshman bill made it through the whole process into the governor's desk, and it now allows every person as soon as they leave prison to vote. And it will, and when it becomes effective in January, 26,000 people in Washington will now be able to vote who are currently disenfranchised because of their past. And so that was cool. I passed another bill that created a statewide Office of Behavioral Health Consumer Advocacy, which is basically ombudsmen for people who are in mental health or in addiction treatment centers, that they will have an advocate. The residents there will have an advocate, and all of these advocates will be in one office where they are sharing systemic issues they're identifying across the state and informing the legislature for future changes, so we can strengthen our behavioral health system, because I know behavioral health is the root cause, and we are treating it with criminal incarceration, which is compounding the trauma and the behavioral health issues. And so really, my whole goal and vision for the work I'm doing is to end incarceration unless it's absolutely necessary for public safety, and to actually treat the root causes of the criminal behavior. I'm also a huge proponent of restorative justice. You know, before I was ever a criminal defendant, I was a survivor of horrific violence, starting in my very young, early childhood. And as a survivor, you know, I want healing, right? And I want accountability for the people who have harmed me. But for me, that doesn't mean punishment or seeing them die, right? It's better if they can actually own what they did, change their behavior, get into treatment themselves. And we see this so often. A lot of the people, everyone in prison is a survivor. They have been harmed and they're replicating the harm that they learned, right? And we have to stop these cycles. And the only way we can do that is really through understanding that harm, all of us are capable of harm and of being harmed, and really addressing the root causes. And the current Washington state prison system is not doing that. It's not rehabilitating people. It is actually causing more people to come out and reoffend. So looking at places like Norway, where they truly do rehabilitate people, and they don't even have to have fences up. They, the residents can use knives to cut their food, and there's no violence in the prisons because the way they approach it is through a human dignity model. The officers build relationships with the people, and people don't cause harm in the prisons because they're accountable to these relationships, right? It's much different, and Washington has a long way to go. And I'm there trying to educate my colleagues right now who really criminal justice reform, incarceration is so far down on their list because they've got, you know, healthcare, which I care about too, environmental, climate change, you know, but incarceration has not been a big part of the conversation. And most of my colleagues really have very little knowledge of incarceration. So I'm bringing that experience, but I'm also fighting for the needs of our district, including, you know, making sure that we're, you know, getting money into our district for mental health, our kids at mental health services, addressing the, you know, ferry issues. The ferries is probably one of the biggest things I work on the most and get the most amount of email. You know, our services being delayed, it's impacting everybody in so many ways. We need to get more boats online, but we also need to increase the workforce of the ferries, and trying to do that in an environmentally just way. I'm in deep relationship with both of our tribes and really leaning, you know, wanting to make sure the salmon recovery is occurring, and honoring the indigenous land that we all occupy here, and also, you know, making sure that they will always be able to practice their culture. And so our environment is a huge priority for this district, and it's the thing that I had the least amount of policy expertise on, and I'm not on the environmental committee, so I have to lean on my colleagues for that. But you know, I'm happy to vote for Clean Fuel Standard and Climate Commitment Act, and also getting to electric cars and building the infrastructure, reducing greenhouse emissions and all of that stuff. But the other thing I get to do is ask the legislature for some like pet projects and money for things. And so one of my things as a freshman, my champion budget ask was to continue to fund the Port Gamble's Fallen Tribes Welcome Home program, which was about to have to go away because they were funded through a federal grant, and the grant had dried up. And the Port Gamble's Fallen Tribe has been a leader in showing the rest of our community restorative justice and human dignity in a re-entry model from the Kitsap County Jail. All of their clients that have come through their program, they've reduced recidivism by like 88%. And because they wrap around them with holistic care and through a human dignity model, and they make sure that they get their driver's license back, and a good paying job and housing and peer support and mental health access and substance use disorder recovery and all of these things. And they were going to have to go away. So I was able to champion to get the funding they needed to continue. So that was a big thing I did in the legislature this past session. Also, you know, funding for a parcel of land in Ridgetop area where there was a lot of controversy about this piece of land a few years ago, and now we were able to get the money for the county to own it. And it's going to make sure that the salmon can still run down there at the Clear Creek, and it's going to be a site for some affordable housing and things like that. All kinds of different funding projects, for culvert removals to the Bainbridge Performing Arts Center, and the North Kitsap Community Forest. Still hoping to get money for Eglon, which is a big piece of land that we want to own up in Kingston area, Hansville area. So it is a big job, and I love it very much. I really don't like how it's a part-time citizen legislature, because I wouldn't leave my other job either, because I'll talk about that in a minute. My job was civil survival. But it makes it hard because it's a lot of work, and I often, feel bad that I haven't responded to everybody as much as I'd like to. We get so many emails and so much, pulling our time. It really is a full-time job, but it's paid as a part-time job, and almost everybody has another job, unless you're independently wealthy or you came from wealth and you can just, do it. But not all of us are that fortunate. But I think when we talk about equity, we need people like me with lived experience who've come from poverty to be there to champion these issues. So the rest of the time, during the interim, I work my full-time job, and that's with the Civil Survival Project. And I remember telling you part of my story, my dream was to have a legal clinic here in Kitsap County that helps people. Well, now we have a statewide legal clinic, but because of my living in Kitsap, so I grew the project, just so you know, from 2015, when it was just an idea and a little group here in Kitsap County of formerly incarcerated people meeting as a support group, to over $1 million budget now with 10 full-time people. And we have 4 lawyers on staff, 2 formerly incarcerated people. Well, I'm formerly, a lot of us are formerly incarcerated, but our legal assistant is formerly incarcerated. I am our community organizer, our policy manager, and one of our lawyers is justice impacted too. Most of us are formerly incarcerated or justice impacted, and we have a team though of people doing organizing in local communities, Kitsap, Pierce, South King County, and Thurston County, and we provide support groups for people coming out of prison or jail, and also organizing on the issues that matter most to us. And then we have a policy manager who is leading all of the legislative work now, because I don't do that anymore because I'm a legislator. I'm not doing the lobbying. I'm the person being lobbied to. And anyway, I separate those hats now. So we have somebody who took over that piece of the work for the organization. And then we have lawyers and a legal assistant. And on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, I'm really excited because we're having National Expungement Week is all across the nation. And it's a week dedicated to helping people find redemption after justice system involvement and clearing up their criminal records, expunging them, and taking care of those court fines and fees, and getting driver's licenses back, and all of these things. And we've been able to coordinate and been working really hard for months now with the Kitsap County prosecutor and the judges and the clerks. And we're having a big day where we're helping 220 people resolve over 1,000 cases and get a second chance at life. And it's actually going to be a really big day for our community organizer, Corey Walster, who some of you might know. Corey, I met through a letter to the editor in 2016 when I wrote a letter about my son being suspended from school, and really highlighting, I think this is the school to prison pipeline, when they're suspending kids for disruptive behavior and things. I had written this letter in 2016, and Corey was a single father, and he was having the same problems with his daughter. So I met him, he reached out to me, and I responded back. And through that, we developed a strong friendship and we started doing organizing and around school suspension issues. And then it took him like 6 months or a year, even though I was very open and saying, I'm formerly incarcerated, I'm a lawyer, or I'm going to law school. It took him like a year to even tell me that he was a felon, that he had been to prison twice. He was so much in his shame around it. And on Wednesday, Corey will walk out of the courtroom no longer a felon at all. All of his record is going to be removed. Finally, it's taken a long journey. And so I'm really, really excited. You all, it will be in the Kitsap Sun. We're also making a short video about the day and about Corey's journey and about the other people who are coming, their journeys, because we're going to share that with other county prosecutors and county judges and try to get other counties to partner with our organization in these big events that help a lot of people at once in a streamlined and efficient way. So that's the work I get to do today. I am grateful every single day for my recovery. Thursday will be a big day, 10 years. I am grateful for my community here. I'm grateful for all of the people who have come alongside me and supported me in this journey. It's hard, but somebody has to do it. And I'm honored that I get to do it because I do think I help make a difference and that I am educating my colleagues about real issues. And I'm not afraid to say I'm a person that has mental health issues. I'm a person that has addiction issues. I have family members. Some people know my my partner, my husband, who I met before I started law school. I don't know if Bonner's still on here, but no. He actually lived with Bonner when he got out of treatment when I met him in 2014. But unfortunately, he's not been able to maintain a level of recovery needed for me to stay in relationships. So I'm actually getting divorced right now, which is really hard and sad. And but today I know what I deserve, and letting go with compassion is something I'm learning along the way, right? Having compassion for another person who has addiction. I have a lot of that, but also having a little bit of boundaries and compassion for myself too, and what I need in a partner. And I love him, and I unfortunately some people are on their own journeys with their own recovery. And so anyway, I don't know why I shared that, but just that, I'm a real person and I'm still going through it, and it's not perfect, but it's because I have people in my life who I can be true with. And I try to bring that perspective to the legislature and let them be reminded that we are representing real people with real issues. And so it's an honor to serve, and thank you for all of your support.
Wow, Tara, I'm always amazed at your story and your passion, your vulnerability. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to open it up to people. You want to go ahead, Jill? Can you?
I had not met you before, Tara. I'd heard of you and I maybe voted for you, but I'd not met you. And I also, that adverse childhood effect, I have taught the scientific end of it. That's called epigenetics. That's how it works to have those effects. And I've puzzled with this for a long time, because you get it from your parents and the parents got it from them, and then so how can we stop it? And what I've come with is that we should just, like starting now, have everybody, and because all these effects start really most seriously at day one when you're born, and up to 5, and further on too, but just have almost mandatory nursery school or something like that of parents who are having trouble free, so that, and then parent schools teaching parents how to be parents. So I mean, we do it 2 ways: have the children in a very, very kind environment all day, and number 2, have the parents be taught to be parents because they've never learned to be parents. So how do they know if they don't know? So, but that's all I can think of, and I don't know how to start that off.
Yeah, that is great, Jill. And I am with you on all of that. And I think, you know, it is, I don't know about the parents, how teaching the parents how to be parents. You know, it seems like the problem is our system is always reactive instead of proactive. So if CPS has to come and take the child away and cause an adverse childhood experience, another traumatic event, then the parent will get into parenting school, right? How do we do it? How are we identifying and proactively doing parenting is the question. For the child, you know, our vision is to have universal free early childhood learning. And we're making a big push towards that when we passed the capital gains tax this last session. All of that money has to go to childcare and early learning. So we
What
are
by early learning, but how early?
like 3 years old, like universal. I know, but we should probably even get it sooner, right? Like childcare at infancy, I know. These are big issues that we want to get to. But again, it is all rooted in how much money do we have and how can we fix our tax code so we can provide more safe social safety nets like European countries. Do you know if there's any European country that has a model like this?
Denmark has pretty close.
I'm from Denmark, so I know about that. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, at a very early age, you're actually entitled to have a place in daycare, even if you don't work outside the home.
Wow.
Everybody is, and of course, they have a year off when they have a baby,
Yes.
a whole year.
Yeah.
So, but I actually had a whole different question. May I ask that? It's something something you talked about too. Is you got to it that you had changed this law that people who had been incarcerated can now vote, but when it was not a law, so when you became a legislator, could you actually vote yourself?
Yes, because I was off of community custody. So the old law was that when you are off of community custody, if you can make payments on your court fines and fees, you could vote. But if you couldn't make payments or you were on community custody, which is probation, some people are on probation for the rest of their lives, though, depending upon the type of crime. So those people could not vote. So we changed the law to now there's a bright line where as soon as you exit prison, as long as you're not in prison 24 hours a day, so even if you're on electronic monitoring, in the halfway house, on probation, you can't afford your LFO, your court fines and fees, you can vote. So there's 26,000 people in Washington who were in that category. Yeah.
Can they vote in federal elections too, or is it only state elections?
Yes, in federal elections too in January.
Because I know there was a big case in Florida where they really worked people who had been incarcerated and it went through and then it was something happened to it. I don't know if they're even able to vote now because that was a big
those are my dear friends. Desmond Meade led that. Desmond Meade and Neil Volz are two of my dear brothers in our national formerly incarcerated movement. They led the ballot initiative. I actually went down to Orlando and canvassed for that ballot initiative in 2018. I want to say 2018, yeah, 2017, 2018, 2018, and or maybe 2019 even. It's melding. Sorry, time is a flat now. But they got the ballot initiative through. But then the dang Republicans down there passed a bill and carved out, watered it down, and now you have to pay off your court fines and fees before you can. It's horrible. It's a mess.
Could I get back to the question of early intervention?
Yes.
We brought up earlier. We were lucky enough early in our marriage to live in Palo Alto, California, and the Palo Alto School District did a couple things which I thought were very much getting at this issue. One was it created a nursery school for kids, and parents became the caregivers in the nursery school. We got adult ed credit for being taking, being co-teachers, I think it was, in the nursery school. And we had regular classes that we attended, and our kids went to the nursery school. There were also other classes that were not nursery school, but they were simply parent-child classes that were sponsored by the Board of Education. And in addition, this school district also had an after-school program and a before-school program for kids. So what this says, at the local level, you can do things like that, but it took a city with the kind of treasury that Palo Alto had. And this was 50 years ago. I don't know whether they're still able to do it, to be honest with you, but it was a wonderful model. And if this could happen at the local level all around, this is a way for parents and children to learn together.
Yes.
And it was a very successful model. My kids loved the nursery school, and I loved it too.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Thank you, Eleanor.
Hiroko,
Thank you. Thank you.
that's Hiroko.
You're
Can
welcome.
you unmute? Oh, let me see if I can unmute you.
Yeah,
Hiroko.
the host can unmute.
Oh,
you.
there she is. No, it's not.
She'd be under Jill. Come on,
Which one is it?
well, either one. Okay, you should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me?
There.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Hi,
Okay.
Hiroko.
It's so good to see you. I saw the Olympic Community College several years ago, and I'm so impressed with your achievement. Okay, my question is, this incarcerated things is really bothering me, and the war on drug is so many people because of drug issue, they are incarcerated. But as a social worker, this is not, shouldn't be criminal issue, shouldn't be mental health issue, right? Drug, substance abuse, that is a mental health issue. So it's a national federal law, but are there anything we can do, state, not criminalize, and the treatment?
Yes.
Yeah, can you change it this way, at
Yes.
least from Washington State?
Yeah. Yeah, that was, that is the issue that took up most of my time this past session, because on February 25th, right after policy cutoff in the legislature, the Supreme Court ruled that our felony drug possession statute in Washington was unconstitutional. They actually cited to one of my Yale Law Review articles in their opinion. I was very honored. But so they struck down the felony drug possession statute. And they did it for, I won't go into all the legal reasons, but what that created was a vacuum where there was no drug possession crime in Washington, but local counties and city councils and county commissioners started passing ordinances, making it a gross misdemeanor, because that's the most they can do. Where before it was a felony, the local counties were making a gross misdemeanor. But we wanted to make sure, we wanted to take this opportunity to change it, because we also didn't want a patchwork where in the Seattle City Council, they weren't going to do it. But, in Lakewood, they were. In Paulsville, they probably would, but maybe Bainbridge Island wouldn't, right? It was, going to be a patchwork of ordinances around the whole state. And so the state we had to do something. So we passed a law, and it was very creative. And I was on the leadership team of how to create this new law. And we made it a misdemeanor, a simple misdemeanor, not a gross misdemeanor, but only after 2 diversions. And Jeff, I hope you're listening, because I know you texted me the other day about this. So, yeah, so, okay, they're voting to do the misdemeanor. Please call and ask them to lean towards, okay. Sorry, Jeff is chatting in the box. So it is now a misdemeanor, but you have to allow 2 diversions to treatment first before you can even charge a misdemeanor. And a misdemeanor is only punishable by a maximum of 90 days in jail, where a gross misdemeanor is 364 days in jail, and a felony, which it was, is 5 years in prison. So we got it way down, and you have to have 2 diversions before you can even charge the misdemeanor. And the reason we even did that was because it was really hard to bring all the stakeholders together in such a short time period. But we created an advisory board that's meeting for 2 years. And our hope and plan is, and we also built a statewide navigator system now. So when police find somebody that has drugs, they can hand them off to a navigator in the field who can help them get help. But we don't have that navigator program yet, but we gave $85 million to start creating it. And we are creating it now. So we're building the alternative as we're flying the plane because of the emergency of the Supreme Court decision on February 25th. And it's a lot of moving pieces right now, but we're working to get there. And we hope in our bill that we passed only is good for 2 years. So we have to revisit it next session, not this coming session in January, but next year in January, we will have another bill. And I am hoping that all of the people on the advisory committee over the next 2 years will affirmatively decriminalize drug possession and treat it as the behavioral health issue it is. And we will have the resources now and the systems in place to do that.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara. I'm
Yeah.
amazed always by you. So am I wrong though? So they came up in the Bremerton City Council, and could Bremerton decide not to treat it as a misdemeanor? Is it up to the local jurisdictions to decide?
No,
that,
it is not.
That is a misunderstanding. Okay.
Yeah, no, because the state had to preempt the field. That's why we had to pass the bill to make sure there was uniformity across the state. So these local jurisdictions couldn't do anything. But if you see anything, if there's an agenda item on the Bremerton City Council, you said the next meeting?
Yeah, the next meeting, it's on the city. Yeah, it's on the general business. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I definitely, can you send me the link in the time? And I want to go to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Find out what they're doing.
Yeah, I may have it all confused, but that was,
Okay.
But yeah, but Dennehy, anyways, I don't want to sidetrack this.
Okay, no,
Thank
I
you.
want to know about this. Thank you.
Could you put that link or whatever information you have on that into the chat room so we can all see it?
Yes. Let me see if I can find it. Let me look.
I have another question, if I could.
Yes.
Sure, Ellie.
Yeah, I have read about commercially owned prisons, for-profit prisons. Is that an issue in Washington State?
No, and we actually passed a bill this last session to make sure that that never becomes an issue.
Okay.
So the only private prison we have in this state is the Federal Detention Center, where they are housing our undocumented neighbors.
In Tacoma.
Yeah, and that's a federal thing. But our bill that we passed bans all private prisons in Washington. And as soon as that lease is up, that thing's
It's
going
fine.
away too.
Yeah, okay. Good.
No, it's still hard for people in jail to make phone calls? That's so expensive.
We've made a lot of progress on that. So when I was in prison, it was about $15 for a 20-minute phone call to call my kids. It was horrifically expensive. Now I think it's about somewhere between $2 and $3. We've made a lot of progress in Washington, but you know, I do think we probably should get it down to free.
That would be good.
Because it's hard to raise. They only pay us, 42 cents an hour. So we are still, even though it's not a private prison, we are still having issues. And I would say, I just got on the Correctional Industries Advisory Board, and I want to get to the meat of this, but we as a state are doing some of the same things that private prisons do.
That's what I
We
thought.
are paying firefighters to go fight our wildfires, to do trail work, to do, work for the Department of Natural Resources, and we pay them like $1 to $2 an hour. And then when they get out of prison, we don't hire them because of their criminal record, but we just passed a bill this last session where the only way I was going to vote for it, it was about $300 million that we gave to the DNR to fight, to do proactive wildfire forest health. And the only way I was going to do that is if they promised to hire formerly incarcerated people. So they created an apprenticeship program, because I think it's wrong. They're good enough to work for you when they're incarcerated. But if you gave them a job, a real paying job when they came home, that would completely change their lives and they wouldn't go back to prison. But you don't hire them. And so we created an apprenticeship program in that bill, because that's how I met Hillary Franz 3 years ago. I was tweeting at her how upset I was after seeing in California, there was some media about this issue. And I knew it was happening here in Washington. And I was tweeting at her and she said, Tara, let's meet for coffee. So then I went and met for our coffee and I said, we have to change this. And so the bill that we just passed this last session changes it. And I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Tara,
May I ask
Marsha.
which law school you went to?
I went to Seattle University.
Well, kudos to that school for accepting you, and obviously they prepared you well because you sound like a fantastic lawyer. So.
Thank you, Lee.
And I'm
Yes.
not in your legislative district, I will say, but I know about you because I read about you in the paper. So
Oh, thank
so I
you.
want everybody to come off mute and make some noise, clap your hands, and yell and say, thank you, Tara.
Oh, thank you all so much. Thank you. Marcia, did you have a question? I saw your hand is up.
Yeah, it was mostly just connecting with you about the restorative justice. I volunteer with Freedom Project Seattle, which brings nonviolent communication and meditation into all the prisons. And the only place I go is WCCW and MCCCW. So super, there's a lot of support for that out there. And actually, it kind of answers Ellie's and Jill's question about how do we support. It's like we create these compassionate parenting and ways we are with each other rather than more punitive. But I'm so excited you're there because you're doing so many things. And I saw a lot of very difficult things that you experienced in the prison. So yeah, really excited you're there.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for your good work with the Freedom Project. I love them. And yeah, just really grateful to be here today, you all. I hope that one day we can be in person again. And I would love to visit your church and worship with you. And this is a community of people who I think I can say I love and feel
love you.
included and feel the spirit with all of you. So thank you.
Well,
We love you.
thank you.
Yes.
God bless you.
Right. Have a wonderful Sunday and a wonderful week and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Leave. What is leave?